Good afternoon, colleagues, friends, and guests. As part of the mystery session and the final Connected Coaches session, I have the honor to introduce our mystery guest to you. A man who is part of multi-sport family for almost 10 years, wearing different hats, my personal mentor in the sports science field, and a mentor for many at the Maltese High Performance House. Last year, he was elected as the General Secretary for USA Cricket. He is one of the best roommates that I know. I had the privilege to work with him as a student athlete, a coach, and now as a manager. The brain behind Connected Coaches webinar series. Without further any ado, I introduce to you guys the manager of sport technology and training innovations at Maltese High Performance, Mr. Grant van der Velde. Welcome, Granty, to your own series.
Thanks.
I think I'm very excited to actually host you on your own show, to get to know you a bit better. Like I said, we've shared very nice times at Varsity Sports, in particular cricket, where you were my roommate. And I must say, ladies and gentlemen, this guy is one of the best roommates ever. Every morning I wake up, there's a cup of coffee standing there waiting for me. So with any further ado, Grant, I think let's start the session.
Well, thanks, Keeks, thanks for hosting, well, I'm handing over the baton to you for a change, and thank you for hosting the Connected Coaches show for today.
No worries, Scotty. So yeah, I mean, we'll have the same format that we've always had, with a couple of slides, and Grant will take us through his journey, and then we'll take some questions at the back end of the session. So Granty, take us away with your coaching journey.
Cool, thanks, Keegs, and thanks to everyone who's tuned in today. I hope the mystery guest isn't too much of a disappointment for everyone. But yeah, there were a couple of people that were quite keen to hear more about the host and the host's journey. So yeah, thanks to Keegs for stepping up and playing as co-host today. Yeah, with regards to my coaching journey, I grew up as a youngster in Cape Town, and I basically lived at Newlands Cricket and Newlands Rugby, with my schoolmates and my dad, and spent many years there running around the boundary at Newlands Cricket, trying to get autographs of players like Craig Matthews and Eric Simons, and then at Newlands Rugby as a scholar with those cardboard little scholar things that used to get clipped when there was still a scholar section at Newlands. And so I grew up around sport, and it's been a big part of my life, for my whole life. My dad played club rugby, played a bit of club cricket, so I was always in and around sports fields. So sport was part of my life growing up, and it just made sense that I ended up in a sports work environment. My first coaching role was through Sporting Chance in Cape Town, and I think a lot of grade 11 and matric pupils are trying to make a little bit of money in the December holidays, and they end up working at Sporting Chance and doing some coaching at various clinics around the Western Cape. So yeah, I got involved with coaching cricket out in Wynberg, and yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. It was an awesome experience. That was kind of my first step into the coaching world, and then you finish matric and you want to study further, and at that stage I was really interested in sports psychology, and that's why I ended up registering at Stellenbosch in a BA for sports science, with my psychology being a major, because what I wanted to do was do my undergrad and then eventually get into the psychological side of sports. So that's kind of where that started. But as things happen when you're at university or the university of life, you get exposed to different people, different experiences, and your eyes get opened, up to a whole world of different possibilities within sport. And a large portion of that was credited to Professor Brisson, who was at the Department of Sports Science, as well as Sean. So I did my undergrad and then did my honors in high performance sport. I realized that sports psychology probably wasn't, well, at that stage, sports psychology wasn't actually a qualification in South Africa. I actually don't think it is. I don't think you can go anywhere and become qualified as a sports psychologist. You have to just do a normal psychology degree and then just have a real keen interest in sport. So then, got involved with high performance and saw what Sean was doing at the RPC out in Riebeek with Alan Zondag, and really got interested in the more high performance side of sport. At the end of my undergrad was obviously 2007, and it was when the Springboks won the World Cup, and there was under Jake White, and there was a whole bunch of different specialists involved in that team, in the backroom staff, and that got me really interested in like the possibilities of working in high performance sport and doing something a little bit different. So after my honors year and many trips out to Riebeek and a couple of evenings around the Braai with Sean at his house in Riebeek, I decided to do my masters under Prof. Brisson, and my focus there was I was really interested in the perceptual cognitive side of sports, visual skills training and all of that kind of stuff, and decision making training. So that's what I ended up doing my masters in. My focus was on cricket. I was trying to improve the visual skills and anticipation timing of cricket batsmen by using visual skills training. And I did that over 2 years. And at the same time, I was a part-time sports scientist for the then SASPI company. And at the same time, 2009 was my first year with Marty's Cricket, and that's the photo on the top left. I look like a tall, lanky, fast bowler, and the coach at that stage was Roger Telemarcus, and the assistant coach was Warren Kirsten, and I can still remember them. I travelled with the team to national club champs as their sports scientist, but no one knew who I was, and I was still young enough to still be qualified as a student. So the guy started planting rumors that I was the secret fast bowler that no one knew about, that could bowl at 150 kilometers an hour, and it got the guys a little bit nervous. But and then a lot's changed since then. But that was kind of my introduction to Marty's Cricket. So it's been a long journey with that club, and it's a club that I hold quite close to my heart. And then with regards to the part-time work at SASPI, that was working with like the 4th team or 5th team men's or women's hockey team. I can't remember exactly which team it was. Yeah. But it was one of the lower teams, but a sport that I wasn't necessarily accustomed to. I was a rugby, cricket, and water polo boy at school, so hockey was completely out of my comfort zone. So getting exposed to that sport, even at almost definitely a recreational level, if it's the 4th or the 5th team at Marty's Hockey, was quite an eye opener. And then when I graduated with my masters in 2010. Prof. Brisson immediately pulled me into the newly established Centre of Human Performance Sciences, which was part of the HOPE project, a legacy project from the 2010 FIFA World Cup. And I was working half day there, like earning barely any money at all, but learning a hell of a lot from the likes of Warren Adams and Melissa Hillhouse at that stage that was working extensively with Marty's Rugby and Warren Engelbrecht within Marty's Football. So learning a lot from those guys. Also Dr. Suzanne Ferreira and Dr. Karen Hugo, learning a lot from them. And then that continued for quite a long time. The contract work, and I only officially joined Marty's Sports in April of 2018. Chips was a service provider for Marty's Sports, so all of the technology that we made use of across all of our different teams was almost outsourced from Chips. And then, thankfully, we made a smart decision, and Chips was integrated into Marty Sport, and I was integrated into the Marty Sport family. So, officially only joined Marty Sport in April 2018. But yeah, I've been involved with the different teams and in like a different capacity with the different teams since 2009. So. Yeah, that's kind of my coaching journey along, or at least at Marty's Sports, and yeah, it's been fantastic. I've worked in hockey, of football, rugby, cricket. Sure, I think Wenzel might enjoy this, but I even had to do some video analysis at Pertray once or twice. So it's quite a broad a bit of experience within the Marty Sports environment. And yeah, along the way, I've also been very lucky enough, mainly through Prof. Bressan, to get some opportunities to travel overseas and do some work and some knowledge sharing over there. I was very fortunate enough to travel over to Australia to do some work in disability sport. It was quite a far way to travel. I was only in Australia for 3 or 4 days and then had to come back because I was actually collecting data for my masters, and I had to do it in cricket season. So that was a challenge. But yeah, I was also lucky enough to travel to New Zealand, where I got to work with Netball New Zealand as well as New Zealand Rugby. And yeah, also over to England, where I got to work with England Netball and spend a day with Saracens, and that was all through Marty Sport. That wouldn't have been I wouldn't have been able to do that if I wasn't involved with Marty Sport. And Professor Bressan was so connected globally, to give me opportunities to go and learn from some of the world's best and share some of my knowledge with some of the world's best. Yeah.
Okay, cool, Gwanti. Yeah, I think we can sit here for 10 minutes just listening to all your experiences that you've had the last 10 years. But if you look at that recent photo, I mean, you've been with the club for 10 years. Anything in particular that really changed before we go to your philosophy, your coaching philosophy?
Well, a lot's changed in the club. I think a lot. Well, I can talk about Marty's cricket, but I think in general, across all of the different clubs, the student athletes are far more have a professional mindset now than they did, when I first got involved with our Marty Sports team. So they are very aware of the importance of training and looking after their bodies, and they also crave data, and they want information about their performances and how they're doing and how their team is doing, as well as opposition analysis. Where can they exploit weaknesses within their opponents? So far more. I think the mindset is far more professional, but there is obviously, they're still students, and students will be students. A student will there'll always be characters within the team that are the same, no matter what year it is. So, I mean, if I look at that 2009 photo, there are characters in that photo that I can recognize in the 2019 team photo, from Marty. So the characters are the same, but the actors changed. So, but yeah, a lot has changed for the positive. It's also a far more transformed club than it was. If we look at a cricket point of view, if you just look at those two photos, there's far greater diversity within the team, which is fantastic. So yeah, that's a good positive.
Okay, so let's move on to your coaching philosophy, Gwanti. Since you've been part of the family so long, and as a sports scientist and working, would you like just to share a bit more on your personal coaching philosophy?
Yeah, sure, Keegs. So a lot has changed over the years. I definitely I'm not the same sports scientist or performance scientist, whatever title you want to give it, now than I was in 2010. I think there's been a lot of growth within the field. If I look back at those early days, you know, doing sports science testing with the SASPI crew, you know, and like just if I look at the equipment and the technology that we had access to then compared to now, you know, there's been such drastic changes, and I've had to adapt over the years. I never got into sports science to be the technology guy, as I'm often referred to. But it's such an evolving thing, and it's so innovative and at the forefront of where things are going that I kind of got pulled into that, and now I'm very, very interested in it, and how we can use technology to improve performances of our student athletes. Yeah, so I think one of the most important things going back to the coaching philosophy is that I've been very, very fortunate to have worked alongside some great mentors within the field of sports science and sports medicine, as well as getting, you know, to experience really, really good coaches do their thing out in the field. So I mean, if we look, you know, at that photo on the top, that's, you know, Prof. Brisson, Doc Pierre, Sean, Doc Adams, hugely influential mentors, you know, in my life and in my career, and people that are, you know, I always feel comfortable turning to for advice if need. Brisson, sure. I mean, I was involved with Prof. Brisson from, you know, when I came to Stellenbosch, and she kind of was my mother away from home. She looked after all of us. I think for a long time I was seen as the baby in the group, and then thankfully that mantle was handed over to Zukanya when he got involved with Chips. But she always looked after us and was a real inspiration, and I'll always credit her for getting me into this field and for including me into the Maati Sport family. And then from a coaching point of view, we've had so many great coaches at Maati's over the years, but a couple of the coaches that I've really had a privilege of working with and learning from is Paul Revington, when he was involved for those couple of years at Maati's Hockey, just professional and how he went about doing things. It was just amazing to watch and learn his attention to detail. Andrew Wiley was our Maati's cricket head coach for many years, a guy that would always listen to the students, and was also seen by the students at that stage as a father away from home. And you learn from him and how important that human connection is with the students. Jenny King as well in Maati's Hockey, just a professional mindset and being organized, planning your sessions. So learned a lot from her. I didn't get to work with Alan extensively, but the time that I did get to spend with him out at the RPC in numerous camps over the years that I've done, alongside Sean and Andre Smith. Very professional, and just the way his outlook on sport and rugby in particular was completely different, and seeing opportunity where others didn't see opportunity. And then Miyagi as well, just what a magician. Ian Campbell McGeechy with the Sevens program, and being part of him and the magic. There's the science and art of coaching, and both Alan and Miyagi just had this way. There was some kind of magic about them that they could bring the best out of players, and it was awesome to get to experience that. So all of those different mentors and coaches brought something to the table that I've learned over the years, and that I try to apply as best as I can within my context. But a couple of the things, or four of the main things, when I was thinking about this, or what are the four takeaways for me over the last 10 years at Maati Sport? And for me, definitely one of them is to create memories. And I think that sometimes our student athletes don't realize how special the time is at Stellenbosch University, whether you're just here for your academics or whether you are here as a student athlete as well. The time that you have at university is very, very special, and sometimes I think people can just think it's 3, 4, 5 years of their life, and they move on. But you often look back at the times at university, with great fondness, and I think it's so important within the student athlete environment that you create memories with your teammates, and whether that's making sure that you take a team photo at the end of every match, or if it's making sure that you have a team braai every month, and just connect with your teammates and your coaching staff, and create memories that will last forever. Because when you get together in 10 years time, when people start getting married and have babies, you look back at those times and, remember when this guy got 5 wickets against Durbanville, or this one had a PB, and you reminisce about those good times. So it's very important to create memories. Something I learned from Prof. Brisson when we were working in the Centre of Human Performance Sciences was to align with reality. And so where that came about was, I think we had to read Stephen Covey's book. I think it's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And what we did is we took a chapter by chapter, and each one of the staff members had to present a chapter to the rest of the group. And it was only really myself and Sean and Liz at that stage, and Prof. And so we went through this book, and one that stood out for me was Align with Reality. And it's great to have dreams, but you've also got to align with where you are and the environment that you are. It's pointless, if I put it in a practical context, it's pointless expecting professional behavior and a 100% focused professional mindset from a third or fourth team water polo player. It's not going to happen. So you need to align with where you are, in the environment. And if I look at a technology point of view, because that's obviously what I'm involved with quite extensively, there's no point thinking that we're ever going to have a high performance center at the university that could match like Aspetar Center in Doha, which is, they can just ask for any form of technology in the world, and within 2 to 3 days it's there, because the budget is endless, the space is endless. I mean, that's like sports science utopia going to work there, especially if you're interested in gadget and sports technology. Whereas that's not the reality in South Africa. We have to deal with an exchange rate that is not very favorable, and a lot of the technologies come from overseas. So you need to make use of what you've got at your disposal, and you've got to make smart choices with regards to that. So that's just the align with reality side of things. One of the things that I say often within our cricket club in particular is to be an energy giver, not an energy taker, and it's something that I've tried to instill in the guys, and it's nice to hear them every now and again. You hear 1 or 2 of the guys saying, "Yeah, be an energy giver, don't be an energy taker," and that's pretty much an energy taker is somebody who's is negative and doesn't contribute to the culture of the team or the club, is always negative about having to train, or why must I get up and come and gym at 6 o'clock in the morning, but I can gym at 11 o'clock, and that just it pulls people down and holds people back, and I always try and be an energy giver, and try to give the student athletes, or try and get them to have that mentality, is to give positively towards your team, and give good energy, give good energy of yourself, and things will go well for the team. And things can only get better. And then the other thing for me is always to make time for fun within your coaching environment, because sport can be very, very stressful. It can be it's very stressful for a head coach, but it can be very stressful for a strength and conditioning coach as well. I think one of the things that will always come or cross your mind before a big tournament is have I done the best that I could have with my team, and are they prepared adequately for the competition, and are we going to get through injury free. So because sport can be, well, there are far more lows in sport than there are highs. That you need to make time for fun and to be able to get out and have a bit of a release. And I think it's important for head coaches, support staff, but also for the players. And that photo on the bottom of the screen is from one of our varsity cricket tournaments in Potch. That's their indoor heated pool. And at that time of the year, there's a lot of overseas track and field athletes, and in the room adjacent to the heated pool is kind of like a stretching area, or like a mobility area. There's lots of foam rollers and mats and all of that kind of stuff, and a lot of the international athletes will go in there and do stretches. And it just happened to be that at this point we were in for a recovery session. And the guys thought that it would be quite funny to imitate the stretches that I think it was the French Olympic athletes were doing in the room opposite. So that was a good laugh. And when the athletes realized what the guys were doing, there were some crazy poses came out to see which one of the cricketers could try and imitate it best. So that was a little bit of like the stress of a tournament. So I think that's very, very important. It's important for the staff as well. I mean, that's why it's so important for us. And every now and again, we get together with the teams that we work with, and we have a braai, and it's just that fun time is so important. And it really creates connections, and those connections and human connections are important for, when you might need to have tough conversations with somebody, one day, or somebody feels more comfortable to come and tell you about a stress or a situation that they're going through in their life because they feel like they've got that human connection with you.
Oh, definitely. Your philosophy have helped us, personally myself, a lot during the 2 years that I've coached at Morties Cricket. But also the memories we created running, even if it is a bergpad or a yo-yo, I still remember those fond memories where your booming voice goes and you're like, oh, Granty, we'll get there, we'll get there. But yeah, no, the chief director of Multisport is on the line, so maybe she is making notes about the expansion of the high performance and technology unit. So, Madam Ilham, I hope you're making notes. But
you already gave him money. You can't complain.
But yeah, I
always make sure that I ask Prof Stan when I get the opportunity to. I always make sure I ask him for some extra money here or there.
I love that one.
That's good, Gotti. And then Gotti, like working with student athletes, they're not pro athletes, but they're a very special bunch of athletes. There's always the guy, the A student in the group, the borderline professional. Can you take us through, like, what is it working with student athletes? Yeah,
so I think for me, we kind of touched on it earlier in one of the previous slides, but for me, the characters remain the same. Every 3-4 year cycle when, we kind of guys move from being a first year into being a postgrad student, and then they graduate and move on to the working world. But the characters are the same. There's always somebody within the group that is like super bright, and is doing these crazy degrees, and is not just passing the degree. They are like cum laude, getting A's for everything. So you get these super bright characters, and then you get the ones that are that perhaps enjoy the nights out in town a little bit too much. But then you get the guys that are, super religious, or you get, you get the guys which are more, soft spoken. So the characters remain the same year on year, and as characters move on, new characters come in, but you always have these key characters, and it's just that the actors, if you want to call it that, change, but the characters are always there. And I think that's that's a nice thing, is that if you can learn how to work with certain characters, it doesn't really matter who the actor is. You kind of could say, okay, well, this is this kind of character, and you kind of know how you need to work with those types of individuals. I also think that, I mean, it is it's a challenging age group to work with, but I say that in a positive light. They are learning. They're here at the university to get a degree, so they are people that question you about everything, which is a good thing because it keeps you on your toes. It keeps you relevant and up to date, because they want to know, why am I doing this exercise and not that exercise? Or why do I have to eat this and not that? So from a sports science side of things, it keeps you on your toes. Whereas, perhaps, other age groups or different environments, the athletes will just listen to exactly what you say, and they don't question, anything. They just do what you say. So yeah, that's why I say it's a challenging age group to work with, but in a positive light. I think the one thing that we've learned over the years, and it's a one area that I think I've personally grown in, is just understanding how difficult a balancing act it is for our student athletes, between their sporting commitments and their academics. But it can be done, and I definitely think that student athletes are far more employable than your normal student, if that makes any sense. I just think that the time pressures that are put on to student athletes are so immense that if you can graduate from the university, as well as having played or been part of a high performance program, I think your time management skills need to be fantastic. And I think that is a skill that that can be directly translated into the workplace. And that's why I think that student athletes are far more, employable. It's something that I really believe in. And then I also definitely think that there's been a shift in the student athletes over the years. There's now there's a want and a craving for data and information on their individual performances and their team's performances, where there wasn't necessarily in the past, or when I first started. It may have just been your track and field athletes that were really, really pedantic about their numbers and down to the millisecond of their 60-meter speed test. But now, I'm finding more and more that, and I think it's the generation, because they're growing up with technology more, and they're getting more hands-on with tech, and they're experiencing it more, that perhaps it's not as intimidating as it was for them. But they're wanting more information, and they're wanting, more data about themselves. I mean, I've spoken how, when we first started putting GPS units on the Marty's rugby guys varsity cup, I think it was the first time we did it was in 2010 or 2011. Like, we had to beg the guys to put GPS units on, and no one was really interested in the information, and it was such a drag for them to do it. And now, the guys, they can't wait to put their GPS units on. I'll get messaged if a varsity cup match ends at, let's say, 9 o'clock, and then there's, the post-match stuff that usually happens. And, I'll get a message from one or two of the players, like at 10:30 at night, saying, have I managed to do their stats yet? And how far did they run? Or what match intensity did they play at? So they're wanting the information as soon as possible. So it's very, very important for us as sports scientists to make sure that we feed back relevant information to the athletes. They don't necessarily need to know everything, because not everything, they won't necessarily understand everything, but it is important. The stuff that we feel is important for them to know, we need to feed back that information to them. And I think that's been one of the shifts that we've made within the HP unit over the years has been the feedback to the student athletes is so vitally important, because it creates buy-in, and it gets the students actively engaged in their program and working with the data. And then that speaks to empowerment. Is I think that's such a huge thing, and we're seeing it more and more. That the student athletes need to own their own program. They need to. Well, we push empowerment a lot. So kind of look after yourself. We'll give you all the tools. Or all the tools in the toolbox are there at your disposal, but we're not going to necessarily, force it down your throat. You must come do this. How can I get better? And you must really take ownership of the high performance program. And we're starting to see that shift more and more, where we're giving more responsibility to the student athletes, and in a lot of the cases it's flourishing, and the program is getting better and better because we are empowering them, and we asking them to take ownership of their own program. And then the one thing that I've learned within student sport is that the journey is far more important than the results. I've worked in if we look at cricket from 2009, we haven't won a lot of trophies, big trophies. I'm talking about varsity sports, USA, but the journey and seeing guys develop from coming as a first year cricketer, playing in the third or the fourth team at the club, and then eventually in your final year of your undergrad or your postgraduate degree, being one of the senior players in the first team. So seeing that journey of athletes, and that's where I draw inspiration from, where I draw great joy from, is seeing guys and girls come through a system where they may have arrived as not the person that played Craven Week or played Grand Coma Week or Kamajola Week or whatever it is, or swimming PBs at high school, but coming to Stellenbosch University, owning their program, giving the best that they can, and then getting rewarded from that. So that journey for me is, it's been fantastic, seeing that within student athletes.
Okay, yeah, Gante, I think, there's one journey in particular in cricket that you've played a magnificent role in Dave Beddenham's story after his whole car accident. And I think that's also, we've opened up our eyes at Marty's cricket. We just want to win the trophy, but there's so much better journeys that's going on inside of the club that we should celebrate. And I think that was also the big shift that happened after that, and I think you've pioneered that into the cricket club.
Dave's story was very it's one of my highlights in my career. Obviously he's our current Marty Sportsman of the Year, and he's a professional cricketer in the UK now, but Dave was in a horrific car accident, and there was talk that he might not play cricket again, and we went through lots of highs and lots of lows with Dave. But to see him, I remember going to visit him in the hospital a couple of days after the accident, and seeing him sprawled out there on the hospital bed with wires in his jaw and plates in his knee, and it wasn't a pretty sight. And to see him playing for the Cobras, last season, and getting an opportunity now, in the UK, and it's fantastic to see. And it's definitely been one of the, Dave being one of the very chilled out guys. He probably thinks that I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, but it was a very special journey for me. Not an easy one, but it was a cool experience.
Okay, as we move to the last slide, Gante, you've been there since the beginning. Like you said, you were part-time at SASPI, and then you were at CHIPS, and you actually saw this baby being born at the Marty's High Performance program. So take us through that journey up until Marty's High Performance under the leadership of Sean Sherman.
Yeah, so if we're talking about the birthing of the high performance unit, Sean wasn't the prettiest baby to be born, but but it's been a fantastic journey, and I think the Marty Sport High Performance Program, I think if we look at the whole multi-sport family, we are such a diverse group of people. And I was on a webinar the other day with Rassie Erasmus through the Marty's alumni office, and he spoke about diversity, and it's something that I completely agree with him, that diversity makes us stronger, and I think that's what makes our multi-sport, the whole of multi-sport, so unique, is that we are such a diverse group of people, from race to gender. Yeah, it's fantastic to be a part of it, and a lot of that's got to do with brave leadership, and brave transformed leadership. And I think it's refreshing working in an environment where we do have leaders that are willing to make brave decisions. I won't speak about what's going on in the country currently, but we need more leaders like that, that are prepared to make brave decisions. So it's refreshing working in an environment like that. I think what else, obviously making Marty Sport special is the emphasis that leadership has put on our student athletes graduating. I think it's, and I mean that if we look at our pass rate compared to the normal students, there was always this perception that the student athletes, are not clever and they don't pass and they're always failing, etc. And that's not the case. With data we've collected over a number of years, the pass rate is comparable to normal students. And I think a lot of credit has got to be put into the things that we've put around the students to enable that to happen. Like the PACER program, having access to a performance psychologist. And I think our coaches as well have grown over the years to be more engaging with the students around their academics and more flexible around their academics. So that's also a huge thing that's part of the high performance program. I think another a key thing is that the majority of our coaches are full-time employed, and a lot of the sports codes make use of very experienced consultants to come in and impart some knowledge on our coaches, because we want our coaches to learn from our consultants, but also impart some knowledge on the student athletes. If I look at just cricket, for example, I mean, we've over the last couple of years we've had Alan Donald has come down twice a year when he comes down with his county team, and having Alan work with some of our young fast bowlers has been fantastic. And I mean, the changes that we've seen in them just after a couple of sessions with Alan has been fantastic. Getting our batsmen to have a couple of sessions with Gary Kirsten when his academy came out and played some T20 games with Marty's cricket, just having him around and being able to impart that knowledge has been hugely beneficial. So the fact that Marty Sports allows for that, is great. Injury clinic is I mean, what a blessing for our student athletes to be able to see a sports doctor during injury clinic times for an injury that they may have picked up at practice or during a match, and not having to worry about paying for that consultation. I think it's a huge positive in the program, being able to see a medical doctor at the injury clinic at Campus Health, for free. And that partnership between Marty Sport and Campus Health, has been fostered over the years, and it's fantastic. I think another benefit is, our high performance teams having a dedicated strength and conditioning coach, and a lot of our SNCs are working with two teams, generally more winters-based sport and then a summer-based sport, and then also some individual athletes. I think that's been hugely beneficial to our teams and preparing our athletes. I'll obviously have to speak on technology. I think we've been very lucky to get some technology from CHIPS when CHIPS was kind of absorbed into Marty Sport. And we've recently Ilham and the senior management team have bought into the fact that we need to move with the times with regards to technology. It's developing so rapidly and so quickly that we need to stay on top of it, because within a year after you purchase a piece of tech, it might be almost outdated or there's a new version. So the fact that we're able to buy some technology every couple of years to stay up to date and relevant is very important. We've spoken so much, and so many coaches have spoken about performance psychology. It's been working with Eugene has been hugely beneficial for me, as a coach, as a performance scientist, and as a man. So I've learned so much from him, and it's just been awesome having him involved, with the program. And I think that, Sean always says that if you come to Marty's, you will get better. And I really, really believe that you might not leave as a Springbok rugby player or a Proteas hockey player, but you will definitely leave having had the most phenomenal student athlete experience that you could have. You'll leave with a degree, and you'll leave with memories that will last you a lifetime. And that can only lead to being a better person. So that's kind of how I see our multi-sport high performance program.
No, definitely. I can testify to your last point, saying if you come to Marty's, you'll get better. I mean, I came here as a student athlete, playing under Andrew Wiley, and I'm still here. But I can really testify that coming to Marty's, it will make you a better individual and a well-rounded individual. And I think that's something we keep on striving towards. Gante, we've come to the end of the formality and the PowerPoint. I've checked in the chat box. There's no questions as yet. I know the Deputy Director, Mr. Sean Sherman, will always throw some spice in. But thank you for sharing. It was really a pleasure listening to your story in a reverse role. I think it's really inspiring that there's still lots of work in the sports science field to take place. But your journey has inspired plenty, and it really inspired me as well. I actually have one question for you, Granty. There Sean starts with. But before we get to that question, in the 10 years, your three best or favorite memories at multi-sport.
Sure. So I think having a cricketer win Sportsman of the Year was fantastic. Put my neck on the block here, maybe long overdue. I think winning the Varsity Cup and seeing that journey over the years, because I was involved with Marty's Rugby when it wasn't going so well with the Varsity Cup landscape, and to see the guys and the culture develop there within the team, has been fantastic. And sure, another highlight. I'd like to say that a highlight from the third highlight for me would just be seeing like growth of colleagues and people that I work with closely. So like a highlight for me is so let's use you for an example. Coming to the university, getting your undergrad degree, starting your honors, and then within the family and getting involved with Marty's cricket as a coach to the Marty's sport, and he's now and in those successes of colleagues and celebrating those successes of colleagues is definitely
Okay. And then Sean has asked your 3 top books that you've read. I hope this is not all during lockdown, but over the 10 years, I assume.
Sure. I'm trying to remember all of the titles, but I read the one. I can't remember the name of it now, but it was the book that got in their winning culture. I can't remember what it's called now. But that book I found very, very on culture and leadership. Another book that I read was the Captain's Class, and the Captain's Class is also about leadership in sport and how important a captain is in that environment. I did a statistical analysis of all the greatest sports teams over the years, and he looked for common threads or trends in the team, and what it came down to is that the captains are hugely influential and then another book that I've tapped into extensively is Bob Woolmer's book on the art of science. It's a massive book. It looks like an encyclopedia. It's that thick. There's so much from a cricket point of view. There's so much information, and Bob was such a fantastic coach, and there's so much really cool information in there. So those would probably be my top three, just off the top of my head. I still need to get into Paddy Upton's book. I saw that you finished it the other day, and I've also got a copy here, but I haven't quite read it yet. But I hear it's fantastic.
Brilliant. That's really a brilliant book to read, Kanti.
I'm gonna.
Ilham, had your hand up?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Yes, we've agreed to have a book club at Marty Sports. So take care of those very special books so that we can all keep on reading and sharing. Grant, you've had a very interesting career pathway up until now. And I am 300% sure that maybe in the next 2-3 years, we might have to have a conversation for further change. I mean, I'm so impressed by some of the colleagues who went to attend the data science course and planning to do more of that. The world of sport has become very data-driven and data-orientated. And if you look at what you're currently doing at Marty Sport, what the business of sport is now asking us to look at, what would you identify as perhaps the top 3 things that have assisted you with your career pathway up until now, and that you believe will continue to assist you as this world just rapidly changes every day around the business of sport?
Sure. Can always rely on Mrs. G for a real deep question. Sure. I think one thing that will never change is the need for good mentors, and I think it's so important, being connected with people in your environment, or not necessarily in your environment, but their function and their role is similar. So, leadership is leadership, whether it's in a business context, or if you are the captain of a hockey team or a rugby team. So I think having access to mentors that are willing to share their experience and their time, that's been hugely beneficial for me, and it's something that I think is important that somebody should have throughout their life. I know a lot of the sport managers and the senior managers have mentors themselves. I think you can never stop learning. I think it's so important. And I do think that, though, in today's times, with everything that's going on, those interactions may not necessarily be face to face as they were in the past, and they may need to take place more in a virtual landscape. But what that does open up is that there's no reason why you can't have a mentor that is based in let's say Sydney, Australia, for example, or that is sitting in Texas in America, because at least the virtual space allows us to connect with people all over the world, that we may not have been able to have had access to in the past if we were just looking for face-to-face stuff. The other two things. I think the technology. Technology is continuously gonna change and get better. And I think they say the amount of technology doubles every 6 months or something like that. So it's going to be really interesting in the next 5 years or so to see what emerges, particularly on the back end of this of the pandemic and where people aren't able to necessarily see one another in person. So perhaps, I think there may be a push. I know virtual reality is we're getting into that space, but there may be a bigger push for it. Perhaps coaches have coaching sessions in a virtual reality environment. I'm not sure where that's going to go, but maybe in the next 5 years or so, we'll see a bit more of a push into that side of things. And then I think that from a data point of view, I sat in on I took part actively in the data sciences course recently that was hosted by the new data science center at Stellenbosch University. And the amount of data that is out there and the way data is going, and data science is going from a sports science point of view, I think that there's a definite need for a restructuring or a rethinking of sports science in South Africa, or sports science degrees in South Africa. I think if you want to be a sports scientist these days, I'm seeing it more and more in adverts that pop up online. They're looking for a sport and data scientist. So you need to have a good understanding about sport and the sports science side of things, but you also need to be able to write code, interpret data, put it into dashboards, use these different platforms like R and Python and Orange and all of these crazy names that they give these data sources. But I think that is, I think the data science stuff is going to become more and more and more important. And I think that I think tertiary institutions within South Africa will definitely have to look, particularly in the sports science realm, how they can introduce data science into their courses. So those will kind of be the three things over the next couple of years I think is important. Quite an in-depth question. I hope I answered it.